Alright, so we're going to talk about Seaman Tate, Sailor Tate. I'm going to go with Sailor Tate. Seaman just doesn't roll off the tongue very well. Anyway, so basically what's going on is there was this guy, he was a sailor. I was actually kicked this story probably Tuesday-ish, I think. And I rejected the story because I didn't have any court documents. The only documents I had available to me is what I could Google. So, guy told me about the story. I jumped on the good old-fashioned Google, typed in his name, and what came up was a story from CNN, and it looked pretty grim. Yes, I'm all for that you should be able to own all that stuff legally, but what CNN implied is that he was stealing military equipment and selling it to communists. So yeah, I'm all for, being able to own whatever you want, but stealing is a different story. I'm not okay with stealing, and I'm definitely not okay with selling military equipment to communists, whether that's civilian or anything like that. So I rejected the story. Finally, Crump and Mr. Guns and Gear covered it. These two videos right here, they did a phenomenal job. Totally blew my mind on how different the facts were from what was being reported. I was like, whoa! So let's go over real quick exactly what's going on with this. So he got caught up in the ATF. They recently changed the law. They didn't make a new rule, they actually changed the law. Because the definition of a machine gun is very clear. Let me go over it real quick for you. So the definition of a machine gun breaks down into 4 parts. The first one is you actually own a machine gun. They can pick up this firearm, they can hold the trigger, and it will fire more than 1 round. 5 rounds, doesn't matter. Any more than 1, that puts it in the definition of a machine gun. Then the second part of the definition of a machine gun specifically is about the receiver. That's where people get into trouble with the whole third hole thing. So the third hole, that is only for an M16, a machine gun, or an AK-47, a machine gun, because you need that third hole for the pin that holds in the autosear. Without that third hole, you can't have machine gun parts inside there. So that is a determining factor right there. If you have the third hole, it is in fact a machine gun. Then we get into the third part, which covers autosears. That is the solely and exclusively. What that is a part you can drop into a firearm, like a Glock switch or a drop-in autosear or something like that without modifying the frame. You can just drop it right in, and you have a machine gun. That's what it has to be. It has to be able to just go right in. No manufacturing done to the receiver, no manufacturing done to the autosear itself. It needs to be able to go in, and there, you have a machine gun. Then the fourth one is the one they're trying to catch him up, well, they did catch him up on, is constructive intent, basically. Now, the ATF is very specific about this, up until they changed the law. But anyway, in order to get caught on this, you need to have the means, all the parts. So that would be the firearm, the parts that go into the firearm, the parts to modify the firearm. Basically, they need to catch you in the middle of building a machine gun, but you haven't quite finished it yet. But it's very clear that is exactly what you're trying to do. You're doing a machine gun. It's obvious. Like, everything is there. The means to do it is there. All your tools are there. I hate to repeat myself, but everything is present in one spot. That is the fourth one. Now, they're catching him up on the fourth one for the 40 millimeter, which we'll get to in a second, but we need to roll back a little bit. So basically, what the ATF did was change the law solely and exclusively, or intent, or any of those 4 definitions. They put the potential of in front of them, because that's the only way they're able to prosecute these. Yes, he had a barrel and a receiver, but they were locked in 2 separate areas. But because he had the potential of, it was possible. If the possibility is present, they are now calling it a machine gun. Now, they never did that before, because you can go into Lowe's with $100 and a Lowe's loyalty card and break every NFA law on the books. So they have to have, very specific definitions of a machine gun. Otherwise, they'd go into Lowe's and arrest the managers for selling illegal machine guns, because all the parts are there on the shelf. You can get them all in one spot. And that's why it was very important before that, no, even if the potential is there, it's still not a machine gun, because otherwise everything, like literally everything, would be a machine gun, because they're so easy to manufacture. So in 2020, they actually put out a document doubling down, being like, hey, it either is or it is not a machine gun. An autoseer is or it is not. Either it can drop directly into the firearm or it cannot. So it has to actually be the thing. And they put out a document. Everybody knew about this, and yeah, that's what it's always been. There was really even no need for the document, but they did put out the document stating it is or is not. There's no middle ground. Is or is not. And they even did a whole bunch of examples with almost machine guns. Like machine gun flats with all the dimensions, including the third hole right on it, and saying that is not a machine gun. A bunch of half-built autoseers, those are not machine guns. Well, sometime in 2021, they changed their law/opinion on it. Now, I know the ATF can't make laws, but they most certainly can. They just say they interpreted something different, and that's what they're getting them for. So sometime in 2021, they changed it to the potential of. They switched from it is or it is not to the potential of, and that's where he really took it up the pooper here. Now, he had a couple of different charges on him. The biggest one, the closest one to actually being a legitimate charge, was the cut receiver. So what he had was a bandsaw cut. Now, I'm not a firearm builder. It was just really never my thing. I don't mind assembling them and custom making them to my little designs and how I want it to be, but actually starting from scratch, because I know a qualified machine shop that does hundreds of them a day has a way better likelihood of doing a nicer one and a better one than I can, so I usually just buy a pre-manufactured receiver. Well, people that were into building them, especially the AK community, the ATF went through 3 different stages on what they considered a demilled receiver. The first one is a highly desirable bandsaw cut. This particular kit will have a bandsaw cut through it, sometimes even just a single one, and it will still have the barrel. These are insanely desirable to find, and everybody's under the impression, as long as that was cut, well, the ATF still had the opinion that that's all you had to do was run it through the bandsaw, because any normal person would see a firearm go through a bandsaw and be like, well, that's not a firearm anymore, it can't function. Well, later on, they changed it to, now you can't just have a single bandsaw cut, you've got to have 3 diagonal torch cuts. And that was a thing. That went until, it was during Obama's president. Anyways, then they changed it again to where now the receiver needs to have 3 torch cuts, and it also needs to have the barrel cut. These are the most undesirable because there's not many salvageable parts you can use to assemble your new firearm. Usually people are seeking after the really, really old bandsaw cut ones. And everybody, including myself, until he got charged, was under the impression as long as it was a bandsaw cut and it was being sold and it was made into a bandsaw cut, which it would have been because this would have happened on importation, as long as it was made a bandsaw cut years before the ATF changed their mind about it, you're good to go. So you paid more money for those because they're more desirable. Well, in his particular case, they basically were like, no, it doesn't matter where we changed our mind. 3 cuts is 3 cuts. Yours does not have 3 cuts in it, therefore that's still a machine gun. It's not demilled, and then they hit them with a charge, which is very unfortunate because the law is supposed to be so easy to understand. The general person, by reading the law, knows what they can and can't do, and if there is a question about it, again, let's go back to the ATF flip-flopping a whole bunch. If there's a question about it, the court is supposed to rule in the favor of the defendant, the average person, when it comes to the government. Because if there's a question, there's no way they should give favor to the government because there's a question about it. It should automatically go to the defendant, and that's the law. That's the way it's always been. Anyway, they didn't in his particular case, so, well, he got charged with a machine gun for that. Now, another charge he got is the 40mm grenade thing.
To own a grenade launcher, all you need to do is buy a receiver. The receiver does not include the barrel. You can then take the receiver and E-form it.
So he had the receiver and he had the tube, and they were locked in 2 separate places, and that, until, again, he was charged, was understood by the general public that having them in 2 separate places gets rid of constructive intent. Yes, you have both parts, but neither of them are a firearm, and because they're locked in 2 separate places and they're not put together until, obviously your E-form comes back, That gets rid of the fourth definition of a machine gun, which is combination of parts. Basically, you got to have everything and you got to have the intent to do it, but being locked in two different safes, that removes the intent because it's clear you're not trying to put them together. They're locked separately. So that, I mean, this guy's case changed a lot of the understanding of what was and was not okay. And I'm still under the opinion, because that was the general understanding and he was compliant to what the general public understood, they should have ruled in his favor, because that's what he was going by. What he was told was okay. And yeah, that's not the case. So apparently his family's got, I believe, a Givesendgo set up to help him, move up through the appeals court and obviously get this all the way up to the Supreme Court. And, who knows? Maybe this particular case takes down the NFA. We're talking about a person that I would consider a military career person. He was military police. He was following all the laws to how we understand them currently from what the ATF has told us. And he's still... So hopefully his case will work its way up. I'll try to find that Givesendgo and link it in the description down below. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you'd like to help support the channel, got my Patreon right there. And I also have affiliate links in the description down below. Just by clicking on those particular links, even if you don't purchase what that particular link is for, just clicking on it and doing the Amazon shopping you were already going to do anyway, I'll kick back for it because you came there off my channel. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.